Hello, and welcome to our virtual annual discipline meeting for the 2024-2025 school year. I am Dane Lamont, the School Partnership Specialist for Penn Highlands Dual Enrollment Program. During our fall 2024 semester, we plan to have our in-person ACE discipline meeting at the Penn Highlands Richland campus. Unfortunately, poor weather conditions forced us to cancel the event this year. However, our college liaisons were still able to hold recorded Zoom sessions to discuss specific topics related to the disciplines you teach. Please enjoy this recording of your annual discipline-specific activity, and we hope you can join us in person next year. Thank you for making this program possible for your school and your students.
All right, so welcome to our annual ACE Professional Development Night. We're going to be talking about Pre-FYE, which I'll explain in a minute for business students. My name is Mark Parfitt. I'm adjunct business instructor here at Penn Highlands. Also the program coordinator for the marketing degree and the ACE business liaison. So I get to go out and meet many of you in business, accounting, and economics courses. Here tonight on the live session is Cassie Leidy from Central High School. So Cassie, I'm going to ask you to kind of be my co-host. If you have any
Okay.
thoughts throughout the night, just jump in and share. We'll share
Okay,
with
sounds good.
anybody watching the recorded version here. So FYE at Penn Highlands, it's our first year experience class. I'll explain more about, we just redeveloped that. But tonight we're going to talk about the evolving college landscape and how it impacts dual enrollment students. Learn how to integrate college readiness skills into your curriculum and discover and share tools and techniques to prepare students for academic, personal, and professional success. I do want to stress one thing. Like I said, I've got to know some of you as I've been out there doing our ACE visits, and our dual enrollment business instructors. You guys are all awesome. I feel fortunate because I really have not encountered some of the issues we've seen in other disciplines. I'm so happy I get to come back and say all the awesome things you guys are doing. So tonight, some of the things I may talk about, I want to make clear I'm not implying that you may not be doing it already, because I observe one day out of 180. So we know stuff is going on that we're not seeing. So if you are somebody who's really doing a lot of what we're doing, I hope what you can take from the night is to know that we're backing you up and that let us be an advocate to do more of it. And when you're having conversations in your district, you can say, here's what Penn Highlands says to help you advocate for what you need in your classes as we're all trying to help students. So Penn Highlands, within the last year, we relaunched our, oh, and I spelled it wrong there, our first year experience course. This is my first, I'll admit, I was told I should learn how to use Canva. So this was the first PowerPoint I've ever made in it, and I apparently, it did not have a spell checker for me, so I apologize. Um, our first year experience course. We previously called this ACP 100, Academic and Career Planning. Some schools call it freshman seminar, but this is a one-credit class that every student takes when they enter Penn Highlands. The learning outcomes to navigate tools and resources essential for college success, strengthen skills required for academic success, identify factors that impact degree completion, and create a plan and identify the tools needed to achieve career or transfer goals. The topics we cover are one is just the introduction to higher education. So we spend a lot of time talking about the differences between high school and college, and we'll talk a little bit about that later today. Strategic learning and higher level thinking. Communication continues to be a challenge, probably like you see in your classes. We try to help students with all types of communication, wellness, and then academic and career planning. Um, One of the big goals of the class is to make sure that we have students on the right pathway in the right program or as close as we can be, on their first semester at Penn Highlands. And we do a lot of guiding, questionnaires, surveys, um, informational interviews to make sure that the path they're choosing really matches their interests. So, Cassie, I'm gonna call you out right now. How has college changed since you were a student? If you had to, what comes to mind?
Well, the technology.
Technology?
Yeah,
Okay.
everybody, the personal computers. I remember waiting to get a turn in the computer lab.
Yeah, yeah, same here. I remember. So, like, I started Penn State in 1996. Yeah, there were those big computer labs.
Yes.
Nobody had a laptop. Some people had like big giant desktops in their dorm rooms, but nobody had a laptop. Um, and it's just evolved ever since then, like 24/7, and of course, like we didn't have cell phones, any of that. So definitely technology.
Yes.
Um, in terms of academic trends, how college has changed. There's increased interdisciplinary focus. So subjects are blending. So for example, it's not just economics, it's economics with data science, or it's not just marketing classes, it's marketing and analytics. And so our classes, even though they're titled perhaps economics or marketing, there's a lot of more blending going on, and these courses are really kind of merging together. And a lot of this, like you said, is technology driven. Continuous tech integration, probably like in your schools, every class uses an LMS. So, initially, when those learning management systems came out, they were just for the online programs. But now, our face-to-face courses use the LMS probably, almost as much as the online courses. The online collaboration tools, virtual labs, simulations, and rising expectations. There's a greater emphasis on independent research and critical thinking, and students must synthesize information rather than memorize it. That's probably that last part's probably the same for when a lot of us were in college. It's also social and cultural trends with increasingly diverse student populations. Factored that in at Penn Highlands, one thing we see is a lot of first generation college students, and as well as non-traditional students in terms of age. That's especially true in Pennsylvania with the declining um, population of high school graduates. Colleges are increasingly turning to returning adults. So across the board in Pennsylvania, probably more so than a lot of other states, we're seeing more of that. Um, Also, colleges now prioritize mental health support in addition to traditional academic support. Um, in the past, I don't want to say that was ignored, but now it's really built into the student success and the services that are provided on campus. Even colleges as small as us, we do have a full-time licensed counselor who's available to meet with students. And students' personal and professional lives are deeply tied to online platforms. And where we really see that is the communication styles and relationships between students, especially even working on group projects. Like I know I'll tell students, make sure you have contact information for your teammates. And to me, that's like an email address or a phone number. But they're on all these crazy apps where they are interacting and doing projects. Like I had one group, they said they did their project over TikTok. I don't know how that works, but they did it. So these online things are just kind of growing and becoming more and more popular. And then the skills gap between high school and college. So one of the things I've noticed, especially being in the high schools, is I do hear a lot of the teachers talk about this to students to try to prepare them, and um, sometimes I think the students believe them, and sometimes I feel it's somewhat of a challenge for all of you. But the time management in college, obviously balancing classes, homework, and personal life, that's a big adjustment for students. When I teach the first year class, the first year seminar class, about probably a third of the way through the semester, I'll ask them, what what surprises you the most? And by far, the number one answer is the time management. They all said they knew to expect it, but they never really truly understood what it meant. Um, Also, the critical thinking, applying knowledge to solve complex problems. We don't, I guess we're fortunate, we don't have the standardized testing with, kind of a push for memorization. So that's also a change for students. So one of the things we'll stress tonight is trying to like integrate experiential learning and projects and that type of stuff as a way to help prepare them for college because they'll encounter this in all of their classes. And then communication, things as simple as writing professional emails, students struggle with. It's common for me to get an email that says "Yo, Mark," that's how the email starts. And I'm pretty casual; it doesn't bother me. But I do know there are other instructors who, will really take offense to that, and it creates a bad first impression where when you really want students to be off on the right foot with all their instructors that first semester. Delivering presentations and speaking up in discussions. I'm sure this is something you also struggle with in high school. Um, we try to do that even more and more at Penn Highlands. Students with these skills not only perform better academically, but they also adapt more quickly to college life. And we see the easier the transition is, the higher the success rates. And we measure that by retention, like do they come back for their second, third, and fourth semesters, but also, graduation, and then beyond that, employment and just, satisfaction in their careers. So I asked my students, and again, don't take this to imply that you're not already doing this, because we all know how students, interpret things. But I asked my students earlier in the week, what were some things that high schools could have better done to prepare you for your studies at Penn Highlands? Oddly enough, I wasn't expecting the top one was APA style. So I'm sure that's being taught in high schools. It's probably being taught in English classes. They are not used to that being integrated into almost every class, especially in business classes where they're expected to use that for their papers. Um, so again, they'll find variations. I'm a little lenient when it comes to that, but there are other instructors where one or two mistakes with your APA style and you're looking at a significant uh, decrease in grade. Um, the Microsoft Office 365, I'm going to talk about that more in a second. But just it's not so much the software. I think it's kind of a technology confidence. And again, I said I'll come back to that. Emphasis on basic math and English skills in all classes. That kind of surprised me when they told me that because again, I'm sure that they're hearing that in high school, but sometimes it's just a reality check that yes, you are expected to be able to do basic math. Public speaking, more of it. So one of the students as a direct quote, it was surprising how much is expected in college. So I know I'm big on this. I don't make my students write I don't label them formal speeches like you would in a speech communications class, but I'm constantly making them come stand up in front of the class, give presentations. For some students, that is that's a real challenge. Others are a little bit more comfortable, but it is almost like a daily routine in some of my classes. The next one is more of it illustrated to me that we need to do more at Penn Highlands, not so much the high schools, but how dual enrollment courses actually work. So the quote from the student was, "We knew we were getting college credits, but we didn't really know how that worked." So that tells me that you were doing a good job of working with the school districts to get students enrolled in these classes, but we need to follow up with them and let them know how that can lead to um, you know faster and more affordable degrees. And then this last one, like I said, how to adapt to multiple technology programs, platforms that are used in college. So high schools tend to use the same platform all 4 years in almost all of your classes. In college, we have the same LMS, but a lot of different software programs are introduced through different courses, different degree programs, and students, I think they keep trying to gravitate towards something that's consistent. They want consistency, but the reality is you just constantly have to learn new programs, and um, we struggle with how to teach them how to do that. For me, I tell them just sit down and play with it and figure it out. There's on-screen help. A lot of it is just intuitive, but that causes some anxiety for students if they've never used it, and they are trained to, we have a class that I don't particularly care for, and it trains students to do computer work, literally step by step. Click here, drag here, click here again, minimize the window. And so they're doing these instructions, but they're not really thinking about what they're doing. So then when they're asked to do it on their own, they really can't. So just building the confidence to say, okay, I can sit down, and like I told you, this was the first thing I ever built in Canva. I didn't have any formal training, and I'm like, okay, I'll figure it out. I'll get it done. A lot of students that like I said, there's anxiety with that, and they really struggle to get through with that. But that's how a lot of how it is for a lot of these programs, especially more specialized software as they learn them for the fields. This is from one of our FYE curriculum documents. High school versus college. Again, this probably isn't a surprise, but high school, frequent reminders about deadlines, district policies about late work. One thing I've noticed that I didn't give it much thought, but I've seen it in the schools when I do the observation visits, is that your districts, I didn't realize your districts set a lot of the policies on, that you have to accept late work, and that's being set on a district-wide basis in many districts. Whereas in college, that's totally up to the instructor. And I don't take any late work unless the student talks to me ahead of time. I'm very flexible when they do that, but that's just my policy. Other instructors very much more lenient. Some instructors have these crazy formulas where, the first day it's late, it's 10% off, the second day it's 15% off, whatever. So there's wide variation in instructor policies, and getting students to understand that when they're coming from something very consistent across the board in high school, that's usually a very big adjustment for them. Focus on day-to-day guidance and in close oversight. So what we're saying there is you're there with them every day, and you're guiding them and really helping them, and you know you're the best support they have in the high schools are the teachers. In college, as you know, because you've all been there, the emphasis is on long-term planning and personal responsibility. And a lot of students, it's almost like they're waiting. There's no proactive attempt. A lot of times they're waiting for somebody to tell them what to do. Big adjustment. Um, you know, we use the LMS, and one example is, a project. Like, I'll have a semester-long project and it's due December 10th. Well, we have students who they just look at their calendar and their LMS. What do I have to do tomorrow? And so come December 9th, it's like they've never thought about that project until then. And it's like, oh, wow. So the long-term planning, just being able to know that you have projects that are taking place across the entire semester, and you are really responsible for managing the timeline of that. The other thing, accommodations and interventions are common and initiated by school districts. There's a lot more regulation for this in the high schools, as I'm sure you're well aware. In college, the support and the accommodations are still there, but they require a lot more initiative from the student. The IEPs don't transfer automatically. It's almost like starting the process over. And that's an adjustment for students who are very used to that extra level of support in some cases. Um, that transfer can sometimes be difficult. And the accommodations, that can vary by class as to what they receive. And again, it's just sometimes making the transition a little bit tough. And so the dual enrollment here in the middle, what we're really looking to do is to try to work with you to make our dual enrollment classes almost like a bridge, because that FYE class that we have is intended for first year students. But the reality is we have first year college students starting in 10th, 11th, 12th grade in your schools. So bridging that experience earlier can lead to greater success long term. So, Cassie, I'm gonna put you on the spot again. When you think back to your own college experience, what was one thing that surprised you or a challenge that you faced?
Do you realize how long ago it was that I was in college? That's a tough one. I guess I always tell my students about, but they try to get out of math classes in high school, and they're like, I'm just going to take consumer math instead of this higher math. And I tell them my story that I didn't get into the highest math because I goofed off in junior high. So the highest I got to was pre-calc, but I had an awesome pre-calc teacher. So we reviewed uh, for our final. And then I went and took my placement test and scored advanced in math because she had done such a good job reviewing for the final. So then I had to decide if I wanted to take pre-calc, or since I scored advanced, I was eligible to take calc 1 right away. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take that. But
Yeah,
without
yeah,
any pre-calc, I ended up failing that class my first semester and had to retake it. And I didn't want to go backwards and take calc, so I really struggled through the second semester, but I ended up passing it, but it wasn't great. But so that was something surprise how, and just how that was a 4 credit course, and I couldn't believe how fast that moved compared to
yeah.
high school.
I definitely have similar experience with math especially. And one thing we talk about, um with like taking an easier class or something, it's so common for students to change their majors, and sometimes they change into programs that have that higher requirement, and then it's like, oh, you have to go back and do it anyway, like you should have
Yeah.
just done it.
Or
So yeah,
or I warned them, my roommate was the opposite. She didn't, she's really smart. I don't know what she was doing, but she didn't score well on the placement test. So she had to take like a remedial algebra, which didn't even count towards credit, but she had to take it before she could take the next math. And so I warned them, you don't want to take it easy in high school, then you'll end up like that you're do well in a placement and you'll be in like a remedial algebra that
yeah,
you're not earning credit for, but you still have to take. So you should try to take what you can in high school and then get placed in the correct spot.
absolutely. Yeah, we have students in some of those remedial classes, and what they don't realize usually, in high school, when they could be studying, is those remedial classes do not transfer. The credits do not transfer anywhere, and a lot of times financial aid won't cover remedial classes in college. So that's usually a surprise, and also a good reason for them to um, try to pay more attention in high school if they knew that ahead of time. So awesome, great example. So these are just a couple ideas. Again, like there are many, many ways to do this. And Cassie, if you like do anything in your classes, feel free to jump in and share what works well. But when we focus on for business students, the strategic thinking, decision making through business simulations, where students could manage a fictional company and make decisions on marketing, operations, and finance. So it's taking the class objectives that you're already teaching, but just kind of twisting them in a way where there's more strategic thinking instead of just memorizing definitions. Leadership skills. Um, I do a lot of group projects, team projects. One thing I've found that works really well is assigning leadership roles, or a lot of times I don't even do it myself, but I tell the team they have to assign the leadership roles in group projects. And what that does is it really focuses on their strengths we just went through a leadership program, 6 of us at the college here, and the whole thing was about building on strengths. And when you're in a team environment, that dynamic definitely comes in play. So if somebody is really good at writing, another person really good at presenting, you have them talk about that and figure out, well, who can contribute best in the different components of the project. And usually when they do that, when they plan ahead of time, the projects just turn out much better. If they don't do that, and you probably see this in class as well, it's just kind of a default, like the whole group moves at the same speed and they don't really kick it to the next level that they could if the leadership components um, are naturally installed into the group at the beginning. Um, Also, a lot of our classes at the college level, there's just more and more data analysis, and it's really because there's more data out there now. But introducing Excel basics, teaching students how to interpret data and charts. We have a business advisory committee, which is it's a group of working business professionals that review our business programs, and they continually tell us if we are offering the right courses, are we preparing students for local jobs. And one thing they just continually stress are the Excel skills. Like they need that more and more and more. And it's not just your like typical kind of like left brain fields. Like we're hearing that from human resource openings now, saying like they have to have Excel skills because there's just so much data coming out of all these different programs that companies are using. Marketing students. So, marketing, we're really big on storytelling and branding. So, students create a mini brand and develop a marketing plan. So, again, this is just kind of taking the outcomes, but then putting a kind of a bigger puzzle around it. Also in marketing, a same thing, data-driven decisions, how to use data to inform marketing strategies. Google Analytics is a one that I've mentioned a couple times in here, simply because there's a lot of educational videos and stuff. It's a really easy, it's not an easy program, but it's easy to incorporate into classes just based on how much um, educational content on there is out there. And then, we talked about public speaking as one of the skill gaps. So presentations in marketing classes, I've had them do like mock advertising campaigns where they have to pitch different ads to their classmates, that type of stuff. Accounting students, just constantly stressing them the accuracy and precision, double checking work, um, identifying errors. Um, Also, grading and rubrics that promote critical thinking instead of just highlighting errors. I know I don't teach accounting, but I do notice this one thing, the difference between high school and college. You in your classes, I've seen it. Um, Students have the benefit from their high school teachers providing a lot of feedback on work. In college, they don't necessarily get that same level of feedback. Some instructors will give a decent amount, and still probably not as much as they got in high school. I probably give the least amount of detailed feedback, but the reason is I really invest in the rubrics I develop. And my logic is that if they don't know why they lost points, read the rubric component and use the critical thinking to figure it out. So if the rubric is really well defined and it says, your thesis statement was not defined, you didn't provide examples from credible resources, whatever, I kind of will first ask them to make the connection. Well, here's what I said. Can you find this in your document to see why you like, can you understand why I deducted points in this category? They don't like having to do that, but I have found that it helps them understand it better, rather than, if I would just sometimes correct stuff They're not I see the same mistakes over and over again. I'm really forcing them to figure out why they lost points on their own. Accounting, ethics, explore real world cases, financial fraud, ethical decision. You might do this in your classes. I know the accounting students, they study all those like scandals and you know, we do I know my business ethics class, we do kind of some role playing. So like somebody's the CEO of a company, somebody is the accountant, that type of stuff. And also technology proficiency, foundational skills in QuickBooks and Excel. I will say our ACE classes, a lot of the ones that I've seen have done a really good job with this. Cassie, I know you teach accounting, correct?
Yes, that's one of the courses I teach.
I'm sorry?
Yes, that's one of the
Yeah.
courses.
Is there anything like you find that works really well in that class? That kind of goes beyond just the basic outcomes?
No, they do love studying about some of the different. I know all the Queen's horses. It was like Rita, I forget her last name.
Uh-huh.
That she stole money from the county or the city that she worked for, millions of dollars, and bought all these fancy horses and stuff. So I usually throw that movie in somewhere, and it's just amazing that she was able to get away with it for as long as she was. Bernie Madoff with his Ponzi scheme. We talk about that. So
Yeah, yeah.
bring in some of that to make the accounting more interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, very cool.
And the critical thinking, I mentioned that I switched to the Business U program this year. Accounting is one of the subjects that's in it. And they have great, like, I've always done the problems with the same book for years, and the problems are very similar. Well, they'll throw in something off the wall that but I really like it, makes the kids really think. And I love it, checks stuff for me, but then they're like I can see it instantly what they did wrong. And so they're like, oh, I got this score, what did I do wrong? And then I can give them hints on what they did wrong and go back. So that's working really well. But I
Yeah,
also
yeah.
I can still pull. I sometimes will pull out because I like that's all computerized. So I'll sometimes pull out an old problem and make them do it on paper, and just to make sure they're getting it that way too. So it's been working really well this year.
Cool. Sounds like a really good mix of things. And what's the name of that new platform you're using?
Business U.
Business U. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Economics. The main thing with economics that could really help prepare them best for the college classes, and I think I have this on a future slide, is using some of the real world sources like that FRED database from the Federal Reserve Bank. Um, that's used a lot in our economics classes. So if they're introduced to that earlier, I know that helps. And then obviously we do have dual enrollment economics. So, that's just another way to kind of bring a real world component to the classes. Again, here's the cross mixing of the interdisciplinary functions, a lot more data analysis in economics than there used to be. We have more real-time data now. We used to like learn economics by studying data that was 5, sometimes 10 years delayed in textbooks. Now we can get like the inflation data for the last month like instantly. So it's just a faster paced speed of data analysis. Policy connections, so really bridging the outcomes to how it's used in the real world. um, an idea might be to have students write an economic brief on current economic conditions, if they were advising um, their governor or Congress or somebody on economic conditions in Blair County or Center County or Cambria County, whatever it may be. um, Again, time management. So Cassie, here's the situation. A dual enrollment student is struggling to adapt to college level demands and frequently misses deadlines and feels overwhelmed. What are some things you might do to help that student?
Hmm. We'll probably talk to them what's going on that's making them miss the deadlines. Try to schedule some time to work with them one on one. Because maybe there's some things that they're not getting that's slowing down their progress.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, I really try to when I see students getting further and further behind, um, try to minimize the damage and get them caught up. And a lot of times they get frustrated because they know they can't make up a lot of late work. So we try to figure out, well, okay, what's the game plan going forward? And again, it's there's a lot of anxiety, and especially in their first semester, this is a real adjustment, and they get so far behind they feel like they can't catch up. So working out a plan with them. Here's how you can get there. And then also mentioning again a lot of the resources that may be very evident in high school, and in some ways, just by having the teacher there the majority of the day, um, they're not aware that the same level of support may be there in college. They just have to go and talk to somebody. And so we continually remind them about things like tutoring and tech support and all types of stuff to um, try to help them out. Again, the cross-disciplinary skills can't stress that enough. So in our business classes, like these things are all mixing. So, you could have a management class, they all come into play. Leadership management, finance, accounting, marketing, operations, ethics. These things are just continually blending into one thing that we're stressing in almost all of our courses. The soft skills, again, these probably are not surprises, but um, we see a real struggle with communication. Like I said, basic how to write an email, um, business reports, presentations. So the more that we can get students to do that, just the more confidence it builds in their public speaking. Um, Networking. I don't, you probably have better ideas at how to do this, but the more we can encourage students to professionally network in high school when they're dual enrolled, the more it will help them when they actually land on campus, especially connecting with professionals, hosting mock networking events where students practice introductions and elevator pitches. I was at one high school where I was really impressed with some of the speakers that the teacher was bringing in. They were all, I think most of them were like former alumni of the school district, but they had landed like in amazing jobs. Some of them in Washington, D.C. They were coming in via Zoom to talk and just bring outside people in the classes. Um, Ideas for this also are, I have found that the whatever source you're using, whether it's a textbook or articles or whatever. So a lot of times the authors of those books or articles love to just talk about their work. And if it's amazing, like if you reach out to them and say, hey, would you be willing to zoom into my class? A lot of them will. It's just a way to bring in, um, outside speakers, present different perspectives and all that type of stuff. There's another typo. I apologize. Leadership, sign roles in group projects, and focus on strengths, like I talked about earlier. I would definitely lose points on this if I was grading it myself.
Are you gonna provide, can we have a copy of this?
Yeah, yeah. Let me fix it. I'll send it out, Cassie.
Okay.
um, um, Technology. So the more that we can get them using basic business schools, and again, this is coming from our business advisory committee where they talk about Microsoft Office, especially Excel, marketing tools. So like I said, we're starting to introduce like Canva. HubSpot is a customer relationship management. I mentioned that one because they provide a lot of educational training. I think they call it like HubSpot Academy, where there are all kinds of videos to learn how to do that stuff. So that would link to some of our marketing classes, analytic tools, collaboration software. So again, this is from our advisory committee. They are on Microsoft Teams or Slack, depending on what they use. They're on that all day long. So I am trying to introduce that for some of our group projects. Um, you know, Setting up team sites for them and that type of stuff. I mentioned the economics site and the Fred. There is one thing we have noticed at Penn Highlands and other schools when we talk to our peer institutions. It's kind of like this Google problem. And a lot of high schools, Cassie, are you guys a Google school or a Microsoft
Yes.
school? You're a Google school? Okay. So, I'd say that's probably the dominant one in the K-12. And so it's surprising how when they land on our campus, um, they do not transition to like the Microsoft programs easily. It's a real struggle, and it's again, it's surprising to me. Where I think you and I, if we were using Google Docs and then we're put in front of Microsoft Word, we're like, okay, like they do the same thing, we can just figure it out. I've seen students like literally freeze when we put them in front of Microsoft Office.
I
Now,
have Microsoft Office in my lab.
do you? Okay.
I try to use it as much as I can with them. The only bad thing is they have their Chromebooks. Like if we're using Excel, if we
Yeah.
instead do sheets, they can do it. If they don't get it done, I can assign it for homework. Where Excel, it's only in the lab. But I still sometimes I decided it's not worth. And now they've seen lately. Oh yeah, because they're like, oh, why can't we just use sheets and then we'll do something in Excel? I'm like, oh, Excel does have some better features. So I
Yeah.
do try to make sure whenever I can to get them some experience with the Microsoft Office.
Oh, that's awesome that you have both. I was gonna say like, um we don't expect the schools to go out and buy duplicate services, but if you can expose them to both, that's awesome. And then, like I said before, um, and I wish I knew a better way to do this, but just building the technology confidence that okay, if I can use Google Docs, I can use Word. Like there's something missing. So again, just trying to help them um, minimize like
I feel like it goes if they know the word, it's easier to switch to the Google than the opposite for
I think you're right. I think you're
some.
definitely right. We have a professor, one of our IT professors, who got a grant through the state to develop some like transitional Google Suite to Microsoft Office training materials. So keep meaning to follow up with him on if that's completed. But again, just um, letting them know that in the real world, these businesses are not using Google. They may use Gmail for their Gmail platform, but they are using all the Microsoft programs for business operations. And so we try to teach that, but that it's something that I said like it's surprising how that transition can be so rough if they haven't been exposed to that in high school. Experiential learning. This I'm in the process of working with some of our faculty to completely redevelop our marketing degree, and we're really basing it a lot on experiential learning, where they are working with real world businesses, working on projects, working on advertising campaigns, branding activities, and it really takes um, the learning outcomes, puts it in a real world environment, and they're just forced to do some of these soft skills that we've been talking about, like the critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration. So we've been doing more and more partnerships with local businesses. I'll mention this in a little bit. Using case studies more and more. So, like Cassie, some of those things you mentioned almost sounded like case studies with the accounting things and the situations. Again, that simulates real world challenges, incorporate tools and platforms they'll encounter in college and the workplace. Time management. So one of the things in our FYE class, we tell them to use a calendar. Most of them prefer Google Calendar, or if they have an iPhone, there's some kind of Apple Calendar. Just getting them in the habit of using that, using a calendar. There's a way to sync the LMS to the calendar. Cassie, what kind of LMS are you using over at Central?
Um, the Google,
The Google Classroom?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Does it feed, is there a way they can like feed that to a calendar, or do they use that if
I
they can?
I'm not sure.
Okay, cool.
I
Uh,
know what I assign in there shows up on my calendar, but I've never
okay.
asked them.
Yeah, yeah. Um, we again, we're just surprised at how many students just don't
That's something
maintain
I'll have
like
to look into.
a personal calendar. Notion is a project management program that I list that one particularly because I believe they provide free accounts for education, but that's good for like a semester long project where they have to track different things throughout the semester, different roles, different people. There is a little bit of a learning curve, but that program is being used more and more in the workplace. And then Microsoft Teams and project management. I'm sure there's a Google equivalent to Teams. Is there something you guys use, Cassie, for Teams?
I can't think what it's called.
Okay. There's
Yeah, it's in Google, yeah.
I assume there's something, but yeah, just getting them used to interacting. When we talk to um the workplaces and what they expect out of college, almost all of these businesses are doing, even if their employees are not working remote, they are working with clients or colleagues at business partners where like, Microsoft Teams just become part of their daily work routine. And that's something they're saying they'd like to see students better prepared for. So been trying to incorporate that into um, more classes. Self-advocacy, we talk a lot about in our FYE class, train students how to ask for help and be their own advocates. Again, there's not really somebody doing that on college campuses like you would find in high schools that the roles of teachers and guidance counselors take on. And so a lot of students are like uncomfortable being an advocate for themselves. And, I'm sure um, you know, I- we have great faculty at Penn Highlands, but just like any school, there are going to be, some instructors students may like more than others just based on personality and the way they run their class. And so knowing how to talk to a professor if they really feel like, they worked hard and thought that they should have received a higher grade. Obviously not, if they were slacking off or, procrastinating and they got a low grade because of that. But if they really did put the time and effort in, knowing how to talk with a instructor about that is something that we see students really struggle with. And so in our FYE class, we talk a lot to them about how to communicate with your professors and how do you go about doing that. And perhaps sending an email with all of your thoughts is not the best way. And maybe you approach them in person. And again, a lot of students really struggle with that. And so we talk through strategies and how to phrase things, not to say like the phrase we tell them to avoid saying is like, that's not fair. Because, the instructor is going to say, well, I graded that and I think it is fair. So we talk about how to, just navigate that process.
That reminds me, when I was in college, I took an art class. It was my biggest class that I took. And we had to go out and draw these certain houses, look for certain houses and draw them. And I spent hours drawing. And I got my project back and I got a bad grade. And it said, have I seen this before? And like I cheated and had not looked at anybody else's. I went out and did it. And I never stood up for myself. And I think back now, why didn't I get but we didn't have email or anything back then. Maybe if I would have had that and could have been able just to email and say, hey, I went
Yeah, yeah. Oh wow, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and now we're hearing stories about, um like teachers are accusing students, having like the AI write their stuff and they insist that they, wrote it themselves.
yeah.
And that's a really tough one to navigate. And I don't know where we're going
That,
with
yeah, it
that, but
is.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so that process, just talking, learning how to talk with instructors. We go through, and when I teach the class, I talk a lot about how in high school all of their teachers have education degrees, and so they are really good teachers because they specialize in learning how to teach. And again, I'm not putting down any of our faculty at Penn Highlands, but I tell them, I ask them, guess how many education classes I've had? And, the answer is zero. And that's shocking to them when I tell them, like a lot of your college faculty do not have backgrounds in teaching. So a lot of them have learned through experimentation. They've developed very different teaching styles, and you're going to have juggle each of those. And again, um, when they're in high school, I don't think they realize the consistency that's there, but it's usually a huge transition when you're juggling like five professors with totally different personalities and teaching styles. And so that's something we talk about in the class, that it's something they aren't expecting, but we help them figure out strategies for that. And maybe you talk to this teacher a different way than you talk to your another teacher. Um, Also about expanding horizons. A lot of students, especially I think locally at the community college level, they're making what I call default college decisions. So for accounting, for example, if their parents tell them, well, you're really good in math, you should go into accounting. Well, the parents, they're just trying to do what's best there, but um, that might not be what's best for the student. And then we get accounting students who are really miserable. And so in this class, we really try to have them explore paths that they wouldn't otherwise explore. Or when we talk about transfer institutions, I get a lot of students, well, I'm going to go to IUP because my brother went there or my friend goes there or whatever. And they've never really taken the time to research, well, is that really right for your program and your goals? Is just kind of a default choice that they've been told all along. And so we spend a lot of time figuring out, is that the right choice, or are there other choices that might be better? And I always tell them, this is just what on the first day, what I have found, since teaching college courses, the things that make students most successful are the confidence, the motivation, and the self-accountability. And I tell them to focus on those three ingredients in all their classes. And you don't have to be perfect. We all have room to improve on all three of them. But that's kind of what I have seen the recipe for success, if I had to cut it down to just three words. So, Cassie, any ideas or like any advice you would have for anybody out there?
Not that I can,
I'm
I,
sorry, I think you
I
cut
don't,
out
I
for.
know, I can't think of anything that we haven't discussed.
Okay, cool, cool. Um, Also, if there's any way Penn Highlands can assist, let us know throughout the year. Um, you know, for any of these topics or any more, we're always here to support you. Um, I'm gonna wrap it up quickly, just kind of going completely off topic for 2 minutes. But I told you I'm taking on the role of our program coordinator for the marketing degree. So do you have a marketing class at Central,
I
Cassie?
do, yes,
You
yes.
do? Okay. Is it dual enrollment?
It is not.
Is not? Okay. So we have Business 230 Principles of Marketing. It is available as a dual enrollment course. Um, there are open educational resources, OER, that are available. So I know in some districts, adding a new class, the make or break thing can be the cost of the materials. So we do have pathways with zero textbook costs for districts. And then some of the things we're trying to launch, like I mentioned, this marketing degree, we're trying to make it more project-based, more experiential learning, really trying to make it different than our intentionally make it different than our business degree, so that the two degrees are not really competing with each other, that we're offering something different. So we're working on a competition that we would offer to all of the local high schools teaching this class, where the students can compete. It might be some type of case study, or ideally we find a real business that, has a problem or a project, and we can have the students in the districts that are taking this class, work on a proposal or whatever it may be. And then the long-term goal is to create almost like a student marketing agencies where our classes can serve as a hub for different businesses that have different marketing needs that students may be able to do almost like micro internships, except they have kind of the guidance of the instructor
Oh,
built
neat.
in. I'm sorry, what was that?
I said, oh, that's neat.
Yeah. So that's kind of the long-term vision. Um, Business 230 Principles of Marketing is the gateway course to the marketing degree. So here are the sequential courses that would follow, if this was offered in our high schools: consumer behavior, marketing research, integrated marketing, communication, branding, sales and customer service, digital marketing, social media, marketing technology and analytics, and then we're working on an applied marketing capstone. So the idea with that student marketing agency, depending on what the scope of the project the business would need, we could try to plug that into the right course. And then most dual enrollment credits can transfer into this degree, not just the business ones, but the accounting and general education classes. We've intentionally built the degree to be as friendly for dual enrollment as possible. Transfer, we don't have a lot of transfer to public universities. That's common for our AAS degrees, but we do have 3 really solid transfer paths with this program. 2 of them offer the 3+1, St. Francis and Seton Hill. So they're actually doing 3 years at Penn Highlands, 3 years at our tuition rate, and then the 4th and final year at either one of those schools. Another pathway is the 2+2 with Point Park University, and that can appeal to students who maybe want, a residential college experience. They can go into those 2 second years in Pittsburgh if they want to. And then if anybody out there has questions, I'm happy to talk about the academic side of things, or I'm sure you all know Kaylee very well. So Kaylee can talk about the qualifications and the any administrative questions about how, if you do want to offer this in your districts. That's a presentation. Cassie, any questions or anything else?
I don't think so. That was great.
All right, well, thanks. I appreciate you spending time with us, and
Sure.
have a good night. And again, we're always here if you need anything.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.
I see ya.